We pretty much take it for granted that our digital world will always just be there. But what happens when it's not? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see just how fragile our modern communication systems really are.
It's that moment, right? That super frustrating moment. You're about to watch a movie or you're in the middle of a game, and then, poof, nothing. We have all been there. So, what's actually going on behind the scenes when our digital world just suddenly goes dark? And this isn't just some tiny glitch. Take a look at this major incident from October 2025. A single outage at Amazon Web Services, you've probably heard of it as AWS, set off this huge chain reaction. Down Detector, which is a site that tracks this stuff, got flooded with over 17 million reports from users as huge services like Snapchat and Netflix just went offline. It was a massive reminder of how connected, and yeah, how vulnerable everything really is. So, to really understand why this happens, we first have to get a picture of how everything is connected. It really isn't magic. It's a massive, and I mean massive, intricate network. I think this is just a perfect way to picture it. We talk about the cloud like it's some invisible thing floating up in the sky, but the internet is actually a physical thing, a web of cables and servers. Every single time you send a text or watch a video, your data is literally flying across these connected threads all over the globe. And here's the catch. This incredible web is both the internet's greatest strength and its biggest weakness. It gives us incredible speed and lets us connect with anyone, anywhere. But it also means that when one important thread breaks, it doesn't just affect that one little spot. The vibrations can shake and disrupt huge parts of the entire web. Okay, so let's dig into the core of the problem. We've kind of boiled it down to three fundamental flaws that make our modern communication systems so surprisingly breakable. So the first big issue is centralization. You see, to make things efficient, instead of every app and website running on its own separate system, a whole lot of them are built on top of just a handful of giant core platforms, like the big cloud providers. This chart shows that ripple effect perfectly. When that one piece, the AWS core system, went down, it wasn't just Amazon that had a bad day. See, because all these other services, Snapchat, Netflix, online stores, gaming platforms, all rely on that same system, they all went down too. That's what we mean by a single point of failure. One problem causes a massive, widespread outage. And we're not talking about a quick fix. That AWS outage lasted for over 15 hours. That left millions of people and thousands of businesses completely in the dark. That is a really long time to be down because of one single issue. Now, the second flaw isn't about how the system is designed, it's about active threats from the outside. Our critical infrastructure, the systems that run our power grids, our water, and our communications, is under a non-stop barrage of digital attacks. Okay, get ready for this number, because it's a little wild. According to a report from KnowBe4, our global critical infrastructure gets hit with 13 cyber attacks every single second. That's insane. That's more than 1,000 attacks just in the few minutes you've been watching this. And the problem is only getting worse, and it's getting worse fast. As you can see right here, the average number of weekly attacks on utility companies more than doubled between 2020 and 2022. And then it doubled again in 2023. So the threat isn't just there, it's growing like crazy. The third flaw brings us right back down to earth, quite literally. Our super high-tech digital world is, at the end of the day, a physical thing. It's made of millions of miles of actual cables. And while those cables can, and definitely do, break. And the reasons why are often surprisingly boring. Construction crews accidentally digging up a cable is a huge one. But so are things like fires, floods, vandalism, and, believe it or not, animals. You gotta love this quote, right? It sounds kind of funny, but it highlights a very real threat. From squirrels to bears, wildlife is actually one of the leading causes of fiber optic cable cuts. Who knew our digital superhighway could get taken out by a rodent looking for a snack? Okay, so the system clearly has its weak spots, but it's not all bad news. How can we build a stronger, more resilient system? Well, the answer, surprisingly, often involves looking back at older, simpler technology. The key idea here is something called interoperability. Basically, it's a fancy word that means making sure different systems, from old school radios to the newest apps, can all talk to each other no problem. Because in an emergency, you can't just assume everyone's using the same device. And, we learned why this is so important the hard way. During 9/11, different fire and police departments couldn't talk to each other because their radios weren't compatible. During Hurricane Katrina, entire communication networks just got wiped out. The solutions are things like modern tools that bridge those technology gaps and just having good old backup systems ready to go.
Professionals actually use a simple but really powerful framework for this, called a PACE plan. First, you have your primary system. That's your everyday network. If that fails, you switch to your alternate, maybe something like satellite phones. If that fails, you have a contingency, like land mobile radios. And if everything goes wrong, you have an emergency plan. It's all about having layers.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? How should we think about this digital world that we rely on so much?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. Our digital world is not magic. It's a physical system. It's built and maintained by people, running on wires and servers that exist in the real world. And that means it has real-world weak spots. And the scale of those vulnerabilities is just huge. I mean, look at this number. Over 420 million attacks on our critical systems in just a single year. Understanding this fragility isn't about being afraid. It's about appreciating the incredible amount of work it takes just to keep everything running smoothly. But as the CEO of KnowBe4, Stu Showerman, says, we are not powerless here. Not at all. Understanding the risks is always the first step. By building a culture that cares about security and resilience, from the biggest companies all the way down to us as individuals, we can make this whole web a lot stronger. And all this kind of leaves us with a final question to think about. As our technology gets more and more complex, are our systems just naturally going to become more fragile? Or can we actually learn from all these weak spots to build a future that's truly more resilient? It's definitely something worth thinking about.